My husband threw my suitcase onto the lawn and changed the locks while his girlfriend watched from our bedroom window. Neighbors filmed everything. I didn't cry. I made one phone call. The suitcase hit the grass with a dull thud that echoed through the quiet street. I stood on the sidewalk in my scrubs, my work badge still clipped on, watching my husband, Derek, drag out the second bag, the one with the broken wheel. He didn't lift it. He shoved it so hard it bounced down the concrete steps and burst open. My mother's quilt spilled out, tangled with my winter boots. "You're done here," he shouted, loud enough for Mrs. Patterson 3 houses down to hear, loud enough for everyone. "This is my house now, my life. Figure out your own." Behind him, framed perfectly in our bedroom window, stood Vanessa, Derek's coworker, the woman he introduced me to at last year's holiday party, the one who squeezed my hand and told me how lucky Derek was to have such a supportive wife. She wasn't hiding at all. She wore my blue robe, the one I got for my birthday. She held a coffee mug, my coffee mug, the one that said "World's Best Daughter," the last Christmas gift my mom gave me before her diagnosis. I heard the clicks before I saw the phones. Mr. Kowalski next door, the retired couple across the street. Even Jenny Morrison, who usually kept to herself, stood on her porch filming. They were all recording what Derek thought was my humiliation. But I didn't give him that. I didn't scream or beg. I didn't break. I pulled out my phone and made one call. A number saved under home emergency 3 months ago, back when Derek's late nights turned into overnights, when his cologne changed, when he stopped asking about my day. "This is Sarah Mitchell," I said calmly. "The locks have been changed. I need you here now." The man didn't ask questions. 20 minutes. Don't engage. Just wait. Derek went back inside, probably celebrating, laughing, thinking he'd won. The house we lived in for 8 years. The house where we hosted holidays. The house where my mother spent her final months on oxygen, watching hospice nurses come and go. The house Derek believed was his. I sat on my suitcase and waited. Mrs. Patterson brought me a folding chair and a bottle of water. She didn't speak, just squeezed my shoulder. Mr. Kowalski stayed on his porch, still recording. When our eyes met, he nodded once. Jenny moved closer, her phone steady, her face serious. They all knew. This wasn't just a breakup. Exactly 19 minutes later, a silver sedan pulled up. The man who stepped out wore an old suit and carried a worn leather briefcase. His face looked like it had seen every kind of human mess. He walked up and held out his hand. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Richard Brennan, your mother's attorney." Loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's inside," I said. Richard walked straight to the door and rang the bell 3 sharp times. Derek opened it, already angry. "Who are you? This is private property." Richard didn't flinch. "Actually, you're the one trespassing." He held up a thick envelope. "I'm here on behalf of the legal property owner. These documents give you 72 hours to vacate." Derek's face darkened. "This is my house. I've lived here 8 years. "Your name is on nothing," Richard said. "It was removed 18 months ago. The home was never jointly owned. It belonged to Eleanor Mitchell, who transferred full ownership to her daughter, Sarah Mitchell, last year." Derek went pale. Vanessa appeared behind him, confusion replacing her smile. "That's impossible," Derek said. "Sarah would have told me." "She wasn't required to," Richard replied, "especially given what we documented during Eleanor Mitchell's final illness." He handed over another paper. "This is a temporary restraining order. You may remove personal clothing only. Any violation results in arrest. Eleanor Mitchell hired a private investigator during the last year of her life. She documented the affair between Mr. Mitchell and yourself in great detail. Dates, locations, and the unfortunate timing of your meetings, especially during hospital visits and hospice care." Richard pulled out a third document. "We have photographs," he said, "time-stamped and location-tagged, including the night of March 3rd, when Mr. Mitchell told his wife he was staying late at the office, but was actually at the Marriott downtown. That was the same night my mother fell in her bathroom. The same night, I had to call an ambulance alone because my husband wasn't answering his phone. The silence afterward was heavy. Even the birds seemed to stop making noise. Derek's hand shook as he held the papers. He looked at the house, then at me, then back at the documents. "How much of this did Eleanor know?" he asked quietly. "All of it," Richard said. "She knew for 6 months before she passed. She watched you pretend to support your wife while betraying her. She documented your emotional abandonment, your financial neglect, and your lies. And then she made sure you could never take anything else from her daughter." Derek stumbled backward, bumping into Vanessa. She wrapped her arms around herself. My robe, my mother's gift, suddenly looked wrong on her. "There's more," Richard said. His voice changed. Even I hadn't heard this part yet. "Mr. Mitchell, we've uncovered serious financial issues. Over the past 3 years, you attempted to take out multiple loans using this property as collateral." Derek swallowed. "That's normal. Homeowners do that." "Homeowners who own the house," Richard replied. "You didn't, which means you forged documents. You forged Sarah Mitchell's signature on a refinance application 2 years ago, and on a home equity loan 14 months ago." Derek's face drained of color. "The lenders are being notified," Richard continued. "They'll pursue you personally. The total amount is approximately $127,000. The number hit me like a punch. Derek had been stealing from the house. From me. From my mother's legacy. And I hadn't known. "I needed the money," Derek said weakly. "The business had setbacks. I was going to fix it." "By committing fraud?" Richard said coldly. "Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell caught you. Yes, she knew about this too. She restructured everything to protect her daughter." I stood slowly, my legs shaking. "Mom knew he forged my name?" Richard turned to me, his expression softening. "She found the documents in January of last year. You were staying overnight at the hospital with her. She asked Derek to bring papers from her home office. Instead, he searched for financial records." My chest tightened. "She had a small security camera in the office," Richard said. "Installed after a neighbor's break-in. She saw him photograph the deed. Copy your signature from tax returns. That's when she contacted me. My mother, exhausted and in pain, spent her final months protecting me from the man I trusted, the man I married." "I need to sit down," I said. Mrs. Patterson's chair was suddenly there. Her hand rested on my back. Derek stared at the ground now. The papers hung uselessly in his hand. Vanessa had stepped away from him, her face calculating. She was doing the math. The debt. The fraud. The consequences. "There's one more thing," Richard said, opening his briefcase again. He pulled out a cream-colored envelope with my name written in my mother's careful handwriting. "She left this for you," he said. "She wanted you to have it today. She anticipated this exact situation. The lock change. The eviction attempt." He paused. "She set a trigger with the county recorder. The moment any unauthorized change was filed on this property, I was notified. She knew her son-in-law well enough to predict this." I took the envelope with shaking hands. My mother's handwriting. Her last words to me. "Can I read this inside?" I asked. "In my house." Richard smiled. This time it reached his eyes. "It's your house, Mrs. Mitchell. You can do whatever you want in it." I walked past Derek. He didn't move. Vanessa edged farther away from him. I climbed the 3 steps where my suitcase had fallen earlier. The door was still open. Mrs. Patterson was gathering my belongings, folding my mother's quilt carefully. Mr. Kowalski was on his phone, probably calling his daughter at the DA's office. Jenny Morrison had lowered her phone but hadn't deleted the video. They had all seen it, all recorded it. I stepped inside. My house. My mother's house. The smell hit me first. Coffee and vanilla candles. And underneath it, something sour. Vanessa's perfume. Shoes I didn't recognize. A jacket that wasn't Derek's. How long had this been happening? I walked through the living room, past the couch where my mother spent her final weeks, past her books, into the kitchen where she held my hand and told me she was proud of me. She'd known then, about everything, and she still told me I was strong. I sat at the table she inherited from her own mother and opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages long, written in her careful script. Her handwriting had grown shaky, but every word was clear. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I was right about Derek. I wish I hadn't been. I wish I could have been wrong one last time before leaving you. What hurt me most wasn't discovering the truth about your husband. It was watching you sacrifice everything to care for me while he betrayed you. You came home exhausted and smiled, telling me Derek was being supportive. And I had to smile back and pretend I didn't know. Couldn't tell you. Not then. You had too much on your shoulders. I wanted you to focus on the time we had left. I never added him. I never planned to. Something in me never fully trusted him with this place, with you. A mother knows even when she wishes she didn't. I needed to be sure you would always have a home. A safe place. A place no one could take from you, no matter how charming or convincing they were. When I discovered what Derek was doing, the affair, the lies, the money, I knew exactly who he was. And I knew exactly what he would try to do when he felt cornered. That is why I documented everything. That is why I hired Richard. That is why I changed nothing outwardly and let him believe he was in control. I needed you protected, Sarah. Even if it meant carrying this alone while I was still here. Please forgive me for not telling you sooner. I wanted your last memories with me to be about love, not betrayal. I wanted to hear you laugh. I wanted to watch you move through this house without fear while I still could. You are stronger than you know. You always have been. When this moment comes, and I know it will, remember this, you did nothing wrong. Loving deeply is never a weakness. Trusting someone does not make you foolish. It makes you human. Take back your space. Take back your peace. Let the truth do what it needs to do. And when the house feels heavy for a while, know that I am still here. In the garden. In the kitchen. In every quiet corner where you once sat beside me. Live well, my girl. That is how you win. All my love. Mom. I sat there for a long time after I finished reading. The house was quiet, but not empty. It felt like my mother had just stepped out of the room. I wiped my face and took a deep breath. Then I stood. Through the front window, I could still see Derek on the lawn. He hadn't moved much. Richard was on the phone now, pacing slowly. Vanessa stood several feet away from Derek, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the street like she was already planning her exit. I walked back to the door. Richard looked up first and nodded slightly, as if checking in. Derek looked up next. His eyes were red now, wet. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. I didn't stop. I walked past him and down the steps. Sarah, he said. My name sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Smaller. I turned, but I didn't soften. You forged my signature, I said quietly. You lied to me. You cheated on me while my mother was dying. You tried to throw me out of my own house. He shook his head. I messed up. I can fix this. No, I said. You can't. Richard stepped forward then. Mr. Mitchell, I suggest you collect what you're legally allowed to take and leave the premises. The sheriff will be notified if you refuse. Derek looked around. At the neighbors. At the phones. At the house. Vanessa finally spoke. Derek, we should go. He turned to her, disbelief flashing across his face. You're just leaving? She hesitated. Just a second. Then she shrugged. This is too much. She slipped off my robe and dropped it on the grass like it meant nothing. Then she walked to her car without looking back. Derek stood there alone. Mrs. Patterson came up beside me and handed me my quilt. I washed it last week, she said gently. Thought you might want it. I hugged it to my chest. Within an hour, Derek was gone. A friend picked him up. 2 garbage bags of clothes. Nothing else. The locks were changed again that evening. This time by me. The next few days passed in a blur. Paperwork. Phone calls. Statements. The videos my neighbors took were handed over without hesitation. Mr. Kowalski's daughter did, in fact, work for the DA's office. The lenders followed up quickly. Derek tried to call me. I didn't answer. I stayed in the house. I cleaned. I opened windows. I boxed up what didn't belong. I washed sheets. I burned the candles Vanessa liked and then threw them away. I slept in the guest room at first. Then one night I went back to my bedroom. I opened the window that looked out over the garden my mother planted. The air smelled like soil and jasmine. A week later I went back to work. People asked gentle questions. I gave simple answers. "I'm okay," I said. And eventually it was true. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table again and read my mother's letter one more time. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer where she kept her recipes. The house felt lighter after that. Some losses take things away from you. Others give them back. I kept the house. I kept my name. I kept the truth. And for the first time in a long while I felt safe. The court dates came quietly without drama. No shouting. No surprises. Just facts laid out in clean rows on white paper. Derek pleaded for delays. His lawyer argued misunderstandings, poor judgment, stress. None of it mattered. The signatures were forged. The loans were real. The timestamps didn't lie. I didn't have to speak much. When I did, my voice stayed steady. I talked about working double shifts. About sitting beside my mother's hospital bed at 3 in the morning. About trusting my husband to handle things at home while I handled everything else. The judge listened. Derek avoided looking at me. He lost more than the house. The business folded within months once the lenders called in the debt. The affair didn't survive the pressure. Vanessa testified reluctantly and disappeared from my life completely after that. I never asked where she went. I didn't need to know. The house, though, stayed. Solid. Quiet. Mine. Spring came slowly that year. I spent my days off in the garden, pulling weeds, replanting where my mother once knelt. I found her old gloves in the shed, still dusty, and used them until the fingertips wore thin. One afternoon, I uncovered a small stone marker tucked behind the lilac bush. I didn't remember it being there, but I recognized her handwriting scratched into the surface. "Keep going." I laughed then, out loud. The sound surprised me. Grief didn't leave all at once. It moved in waves. Some days I felt strong enough to rearrange furniture, repaint walls, claim spaces that had felt tainted. Other days, I sat on the floor with the quilt wrapped around me and let the heaviness come. Both were okay. Mrs. Patterson checked in often. So did Jenny. Sometimes we drank tea on the porch in silence. Sometimes we talked about nothing at all. It helped more than I expected. The neighborhood changed its tone after that. People waved more, asked if I needed anything. Not out of pity but recognition. Like they'd seen something important and hadn't forgotten it. One evening, I found a folder on my doorstep. Inside were copies of every video recorded that day. Each labeled, time, date, address. Mr. Kowalski had organized them himself. "Just in case," he said when I thanked him. "Figured your mother would approve." I think she would have. Months passed. I stopped bracing myself every time the phone rang. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. The house began to feel like a home again, not a battleground. I turned the spare room into a small office, framed my nursing license, hung a photo of my mother laughing in the kitchen, flour on her cheek, cooked more, real meals, recipes she taught me. One night, while cleaning out a drawer, I found an envelope I didn't recognize. Inside was a note in her handwriting. "I knew you'd find this eventually," it read. "I hid it because I didn't want you to rush your healing. But when you're ready, call the number on the back." The number belonged to a therapist she'd vetted herself, specialized in betrayal trauma. Of course she had. I waited another week. Then I called. Healing wasn't neat. Some sessions left me exhausted. Others left me lighter. I learned how much of myself I'd folded away to keep the peace. How much strength I'd mistaken for obligation. I learned that safety wasn't something you earn by sacrificing yourself. It was something you're allowed to have. On the anniversary of my mother's passing, I invited a few people over. Just neighbors. Simple food. Candles in the garden. We shared stories about her. The way she remembered birthdays. The way she listened. The way she protected people without needing credit. When the sun went down, I stood alone by the lilac bush and pressed my hand to the stone marker. "I'm okay," I whispered. "You did good." A year later, I sold Derek's wedding ring. Not out of anger, just practicality. I used the money to replace the front door. Stronger frame, better lock. The old one had seen enough. I didn't rush into anything new. I focused on work, on rest, on learning who I was.